Hey, it's Off Track West, and it's day 17 of Fire Emblem February, and I'm here to talk about Fire Emblem 7, Blazing Sword. Fire Emblem 7 is a game that in recent years has been seen with a more critical eye for its troubled translation errors, weak villains, and plot holes. While I very much agree that Fire Emblem 7's writing can be very spotty at some points, I want to do a video talking about some of the themes the game explores. I think the game has very well written characters and themes that are represented all throughout the game. While this video won't necessarily have a beat for beat plot summary for the sake of time, for the purposes of this video, I'll be talking about the main characters' arcs, the villains, and almost every character in the game, as I read literally every single support conversation for the sake of this video. There are a lot of different themes in Fire Emblem 7, whether it's the strength of emotions, how shared pride in one's background can build connections, and the power of being able to have a place where you belong, whether it's a biological family or a found family. There are many characters who have a shared sense of camaraderie through their passions of magic, fighting, or knighthood, lonely characters who are lost seeking a connection, or characters that have found a place where they belong. We'll explore how to fit in that space. But if I were to break down the themes, I'd say Fire Emblem 7 is overall about the importance to be able to express your emotions of joy and sorrow. Or in other words, Fire Emblem 7 is all about love and grief. While these ideas may seem very broad, I hope by the end of the video you can see it's actually a recurring theme in the game. Starting with Lyn mode. Though it gets lambasted for being a very typical succession story and being very hands-on as a tutorial, the arc Lyn goes through is very much filled with all of the themes that are present throughout the rest of the game. We meet Lyn, a girl from the Lorca tribe of the Sakai Plains, initially through an act of kindness, saving the tactician, but being very much alone. After she expresses her grief over the death of her tribe, we at first follow her to get revenge, but that quickly changes with the arrival of Shane and Kent, where she finds out her heritage as Lady of Kaelin, and that she still has remaining family members alive. As the journey continues, Lyn suddenly gains a found family in the Lindis League, Shane, Kent, Will, and Florina, who will be with her for the remainder of the game. She's suddenly not alone anymore, with the support of her friends behind her. When encountering Raucous Arafin, who disrespects her Sakai heritage, she refuses to seek help from someone who would attack her lineage, which spurs Raph, a fellow Sashayan, to follow her. Wallace, seeing the daughter of the lady he once served, makes him instantly join the cause in helping Lyn. Finally, Lyn mode ends with her and her friends defeating her granduncle and her meeting her grandfather for the first time. He laments having rejected her parents' love for each other, but Lyn reassures him they lived a happy life together, and encourages him to live on too, so she could show him the plains she grew up in and her mother loved so much, giving a second chance to two people who lost their family to have each other. This story is ultimately about Lyn being able to move forward in love again in the wake of her family's death, where her kindness saves people like Dorcas, who would have gone down a round of regrets, or Raph, who's a Circaean who only knew isolation his whole life. It ends with her seemingly finding a new place to belong. In her supports in the main story though, Lyn isn't happy as she thought she would be. Lyn struggles to fit into the expectations of what a noble lady should be. She does love her friends and her grandfather, but it becomes clear that she deeply misses the plains and never wanted anything to do with this noble life, outside of being with her last remaining family member. While her grief of the loss of her parents is still a component of her character, her new conflict is choosing to remain in the life of nobility she isn't happy with, or returning to her home in the plains where she belongs. Either way, she still has love for her comrades who she's always willing to fight for. Eliwood begins the story by investigating the disappearance of his father, Elbert, and is later joined by Hector, who left his brother, Lord Uther, and sought to help him. As they journey through together, they find that the Black Fang, a group of assassin mercenaries, are behind Eliwood's father's disappearance, and are eventually joined by Lyn, who they help save from the attack from a neighboring lord. As their relationship develops, they form a trio where they all foil each other. Though Hector and Eliwood are already friends, Lyn and Eliwood met in her story, where he helps her in her succession. An important scene to look at is Lyn and Hector's encounter when they're on their way to Dread Isle, where they suspect Eliwood's father is. They both express their shared grief over the loss of their parents, with Hector turning away from Lyn talking about how he couldn't bring himself to cry after the death of his parents. At this moment, they both share mutual understanding with each other, what it's like to lose a parent, and both of them want to make sure Eliwood doesn't have to go through what they did. Unfortunately though, when they catch up to his father, they're unable to stop the reality from happening, with Nurgle, the main villain, killing Eliwood's father and him dying in the young boy's arms. Eliwood is way more sensitive and instant compared to his friends. This is his first time dealing with a personal loss, and they're deeply empathetic for him, though it's Ninian, a mysterious girl whose presence eased the pain of his loss as their relationship develops throughout the game, with Eliwood growing to love Ninian no matter what may change between the two of them. By the end, after fighting the Black Fang which Nurgle is in control over, they end up directly challenging him, but he in turn turns Ninian into a dragon, which she had always been implied to be. Eliwood then accidentally kills her. This is now the second death Eliwood experiences, though this time with his friends' love and support, he's stronger now, and with his help they finally defeat Nurgle once and for all. Eliwood is a very idealistic, almost naive character. He's the closest main character Phylum has to someone with a pure heart. Even when fighting Nurgle, he pities him rather than fighting with anger and revenge. But it isn't necessarily a bad thing. Being a kind person so in tune with his emotions, both his sadness and happiness, is what allows him to be so supportive for others and always look out for their best interests. This shows up when he's encouraging Lyn to be herself, or the tenderness he shows in his relationship with Ninian. It especially shows up in his friendship with Hector, where he encourages him to forgive Oswin for keeping secrets from him. Eliwood exhibits traits that are quite literally the opposite of toxic masculinity, and you can see that in the care he shows to everyone. After experiencing 2 losses, though Ninian does get resurrected, Eliwood ends the story more mature. Though he experiences a lot of grief, he doesn't allow it to beat him down or make him stop being the loving person that he is. Hector is very brash and doesn't always do what's expected of a noble. In his supports, despite his tough exterior, or maybe because of his tough exterior, Hector is very emotionally driven, always looking out for his allies and accepting Sarah as family after learning about her childhood. Being someone who is laid back and fiercely loyal to his friends, he truly marches to the beat of his own drum, which makes his vassals feel like they're being pulled around, but I also admire him for this. One thing to note is when Jafar the Black Fang joins their army, he isn't nearly as accepting as Eliwood and Lyn, because Jafar killed one of his own, Layla, their spy. Hector's brashness catches up to him though, when he finds out his brother Uther died while he was off helping Eliwood, a secret Oswin kept from him. Though Hector is very emotionally stunted, he deeply cares for his allies, and ends the story taking more responsibility. An interesting thing to note, the game never punishes Eliwood or Hector for the emotions they experience, but it takes them through a journey where we explore how they react when they lose what they love, and the grief that comes with that. Both of their reactions are valid responses, but the fact that they have each other, Lyn, and their vassals gives them a place where they belong and they can properly express their emotions. Nurgle is a complicated villain, but not necessarily in a good way. If the player is able to complete his side story chapters, it becomes clear that he's actually the father of Ninian and Nils, who are half-dragons from Arcadia, a place where dragons and humans are at peace with each other. With his wife presumably kidnapped and dead, Chapter 19XX, Glimpse of Time, tells us that Nurgle, in pursuit of dark magic, completely lost himself in pursuit of power as he sent his children away through the Dragon's Gate. Nurgle, so consumed by power, eventually lost memories of even having the 2 of them and began to use them as tools. Nurgle as a villain is supposed to represent what happens to someone that loses touch with their emotions and isn't able to handle loss. While the difficulty of getting this chapter and the mistranslation makes this idea weaker than it should have been, if this chapter were more accessible to players, it could have made a difference in the perception of Nurgle. However, I would argue that the morphs at least do a decent job at executing the themes I'm bringing up, with Sonia being an abusive mom incapable of love, and Limstella lamenting their death by feeling an absence of sorrow, one of them unable to love and the other unable to grieve. This has been part 1 of looking at the themes in Fire Emblem 7. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe, and look forward to the next one coming tomorrow, where we're going to be looking at every single support conversation in the game and seeing how the themes of FE7 fit in them.